And welcome back, everyone, to Tennessee This Week. Time now to hear from our panel of pundits. Joining me today, WATE 6 on your side, healthcare analyst Craig Griffith, WATE 6 on your side, political contributor Courtney Piper, and WATE 6 on your side, political analyst George Corda. First of all, great to have all of you here.
Glad to have you here.
Well, yeah, I tell you what, this is something new, isn't it?
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. We're going to let everybody in on a little bit of a secret. We're actually recording this on a Thursday night, just hours after the last of the funeral services for President George H.W. Bush. And Craig, we want to point out you actually were in Houston for one of the events today, and I know you even have the program from that. But kind of walk us through what that was like today, the experience to be there in person.
Well, I was at the funeral service at 10 o'clock on Thursday morning, and it was inspirational, moving. People were lots of tears, but there was the occasional laughter as they went through his life. Many people recited James Baker, his accomplishments as president, head of the CIA, and the Senate. So, but the thing that I found the most moving was the speech by his oldest grandson, George Prescott Bush, who's a Texas land commissioner, and he recounted Bush as a grandparent, not as a public official. He remembered him as a man who passed out ice cream and Klondike bars at the barbecues that they would have on the lawn. They would go out fishing together. Just related to him that he was a person who really was a family man who put family first, as he put the United States first when he was in public office. So I felt honored to be there amongst the many thousands of people that were saluting him, and it's something I'll never forget.
I liked when the grandson made the comment that his grandfather, he always liked to, he prided himself in winning the contest on who could fall asleep first.
Right. Yeah. So the grandchild would fall asleep
That's right.
That's popular in our house as well.
Is it? All right. Very nice. Well, let me ask you first of all, George, actually, I'm going to ask you, because I know there was a letter, if I'm not mistaken, that you received.
Yeah, I had the privilege of meeting President Bush probably about a half a dozen times, once in the White House, once when he was vice president at his residence, and several times in Knoxville. And after one of those, I wrote him a note. Just said I really appreciated something that he had done, and I wrote that, and I sent it off. And about 3 weeks later, here comes an official envelope, and it's clearly, it's not auto-penned, it is a personal note talking about what I had said, and with a very nice, wish you all the best in the future. And I obviously saved it, but I thought that is something that the powerful don't always do, is show that sort of either concern or humility. Yeah. There's actually a form of humility when somebody in that position sits down and writes a note to somebody he doesn't know. Now, it also makes a political contact potentially, but it's meaningful. And it's a testimony to him that so many people are praising him now. I'm not sure all of it's genuine. I think some of it's politically driven, but I think for the most part it is sincere. And I think he was a president who, had he served 2 terms, America would be a much different place today. And his was a life well lived.
Well, his son even made the comment he may be the greatest one-term president that we have ever had. Courtney, I have to ask you, just to, we heard in an earlier story, his ability to reach across party lines, and I think we have seen through the ceremonies all this week too that the outpouring and the kind words being said on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, when President George H.W. Bush was elected, I was 8 years old, and my memories of that were campaigning for his opponent, Michael Dukakis. My whole family was campaigning for Dukakis. So my memories of him are around that campaign slogan of "Read my lips, no new taxes," the Iraq War, wars in the Middle East, and it's just been, I've really appreciated the look back on his life in office. It's hard to believe that he was a one-term president, given everything that happened in the span of that 4 years. And I often wonder if we'll ever see a leader like him again in the Republican Party. It's hard to even fathom looking at where we are right now.
Right, exactly.
I don't think that's restricted to Republicans. And I think that's part of the issue, is those 4 years when he was president, he was savaged. In fact, Juan Williams, who's obviously a commentator, was a big fan of President Bush's, and he mentioned something the other night I remembered from that time when Bush broke his promise, which he did, on raising taxes at the urging of Democratic leaders in Congress to show this bipartisan effort to reduce the budget deficit. They hailed him as a statesman. 2 years later, when he was running against Clinton, they were calling him I remember watching on TV where one of them said, don't forget, this man lied to you. He went back on his word. So, but it's a passage of time, and it's also don't speak ill of the dead. But one of the reasons he was one-term president is because they spent a lot of time tearing him to pieces.
But, you know, we brought this up twice now, the read my lips comment. I mean, looking back, I mean, obviously we've heard a lot of kind words and looking back at all of his accomplishments, but is this something that will tarnish his presidency, his one term, or is this something that because of everything else that's happened that it's going to kind of be forgotten?
Well, it's part of the political lexicon now. I mean, you use that phrase for almost anything if you're running for office. Read my lips, no new... Right. Whatever. Right. Yeah. So it's a part of our lexicon, and it's also part of him that cost him the election. But of course, we have to remember there was a third-party candidate that reached higher vote totals than anyone ever anticipated in that race. So it was a very unique situation in time, and with Ross Perot in there getting so much votes. So it's just not that one phrase. It's the tenor of the time that cost him that election.
But that one phrase certainly was like this big gleaming moment. The biggest teachable moment in campaign history of what not to say and what promises not to make on the campaign trail.
Well, if you're going to get up in front of the entire planet and declare something so concretely, don't go back on it.
It was a change for him.
Definitely.
He was not.
Well, he's even said, looking back on it, says that was the worst thing.
He was not into coming up with those, little quick pop culture phrases like that, and he changed it and did that one time, and it cost him. So he was more of a cerebral thinker, and he was not saluted today as a great orator. So they had to push him out to do things like that. So it's a moment that'll go down in our political history.
Well, how about real quick here, just kind of looking ahead now and looking back and ahead. Any lessons learned going forward now from his administration, from his time in office, as we now get ready for another whole round of campaigning here just around the corner?
Well, the coalition building.
Sure.
I think that we, at this point in time, don't have that ability to do that. The coalition that he built to liberate Iraq, was something that, will be very difficult to replicate now at this point in time when there's a whole bunch of silos. Everyone in the country are looking to, everyone in the country and in the world are looking after their own interests, and not necessarily for the larger communal.
Well, every nation's going to look out for its own interests, but politically, it's unlikely, at least in the near term, we're going to have anybody who is described as he was known for reaching across the aisle. McCain was described that way, and I have asked friends of mine, Democratic friends of mine, who's the Democrat that reaches across the aisle in Congress? Who's the Democrat that has reached out to Republicans? And they have a hard time coming up with very many names because the edges are driving the discussion. The far left and the far right are driving the discussion. And as such, it's a horseshoe. Both sides are almost identical, but they're very different in how they view things, and that's why if you say anything right now that is remotely bipartisan, you are shouted down as a traitor.
And that's why we have gridlock in Washington. Right. That's why we can't get anything done. Can't get anything done on immigration or the budget or health care. So it's gridlock now.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to move forward here for a moment. Still to come, saying goodbye to retiring Senator Bob Corker. Tributes on both sides of the aisle. You're watching Tennessee This Week on WATE 6 on your side.